1. This happened over 10 years ago, but still makes me smile. I went to a very uppity private school, predominantly Caucasian, with extremely wealthy people, for 3 years in high school. I had attended that school for 2 years as a day student, local kids, where I was known as a pretty good kid, good grades, respectful, etc. I went into their boarding school component for my 3rd year there. Some context. The boarding school students were susceptible to their own set of rules, one of them being a very strict no-theft policy. It was commonplace, at least in my house, for girls to leave their dorms unlocked, as there was a high level of trust amongst everyone. During my boarding school year, I, 16, female at the time, flew home over Christmas break and had borrowed my 14-year-old sister's bottle of perfume. It was a very distinctive bottle with gems glued onto it, a couple of which had fallen off. I accidentally packed it when I flew back to boarding school. I threw it in my bedside drawer and didn't give much thought to it. That is, until my sister called me a few weeks later and berated me for stealing her perfume, and demanded I give it back the next time I see her. So I checked the bedside drawer, nowhere to be found. I tear my entire dorm apart, question all of my friends. No sign of it. I eventually accepted the fact that I was going to have to buy my sister a replacement bottle, but I knew I hadn't misplaced it, and something about this situation didn't sit right with me. About a week later, I'm across the hall in my so-called friend Sophie's room, and I see that very perfume bottle sitting on her nightstand. I immediately recognized it as mine, due to the distinctive missing gems and the amount of perfume that was missing in the bottle. I gave her the benefit of the doubt and very nicely asked her, "Oh hey, Soph, did I leave this bottle in your room by chance last week?" She immediately denied it, and claimed that it was a bottle given as a gift to her by her mother. The blood boiled in me as she spewed her BS lie, and I immediately determined I would force her to fess up one way or another. It wasn't even about the bottle of perfume or needing to return it to my sister anymore. It was the fact that I gave her the chance to give it back without having to admit her lie or cause her any embarrassment. And she still decided to try to get away with stealing from me. Straight up rude, and I'll make her pay. So I hatched a plan. I took a permanent marker and wrote my initials on the bottom of every single bottle of perfume that I owned. I waited until I knew Sophie was in class, and banking on the chance that her door would be open, it was, I snuck into her room and wrote my initials on the bottom of my sister's bottle of perfume as well. I played it cool with Sophie and everyone else, making sure to hang out with Sophie in her room a few times, so as not to draw any suspicion. I waited a few days and then reported her to the house parent. I told the house parent that I was hanging out in Sophie's room and thought I noticed my initials in permanent marker on the bottom of the bottle, but I wasn't sure I'd like house parent to go check. My spiel went something like this. Sophie is my friend, and I already questioned her about this, but she denied everything, and I trust her. So I feel super awful for accusing her, because I don't want to accuse her of being a thief or a liar. But, I do know that you guys have a no tolerance towards theft policy. And I do have a feeling that bottle of perfume is mine. So if she did steal it, that's not okay, because I just don't know if I would be able to trust her or anyone else in this house anymore. House parent sticks up for her character, but says they'll look into it. They went to question Sophie in her room later that day and checked the bottom of the perfume bottle, which now has my initials on it. Well, lo and behold, Sophie pulls the crocodile tears, wailing about how she never meant to steal or lie. She was just scared of getting in trouble, yada yada. She got gated, which was my boarding school's version of being grounded, but intensely worse. I don't remember all the conditions of being gated, but they included that you can't leave school property at all, and for the period of time that you are gated, you have to sign into your house's office every hour on the dot, between 8 a.m. and 11 p.m., unless you're in class. They seriously reprimanded you even if you were a few minutes late, no matter the reason. Turns out that the school didn't exactly have a no-tolerance policy, as the house parent ended up completely falling for her crocodile tears and asked me to keep it a secret so as to protect the student, because she was a good girl who just made a mistake. She never apologized to me, by the way. But they were obligated to punish her. They never caught me sneaking into her room to plant my initials, and she was forced to cough up to her BS due to my scheming, which was incredibly satisfying. 2. I worked at a law firm that handled an extremely high volume of cases. I'm talking thousands per month. And due to the specific field they were in, the work called for a ton of motion practice. We had to respond to motions on nearly every case, after which the cases would settle, and we would be paid relatively small amounts that added up. To answer all the motions, we would use a boilerplate template, input a few specifics via prompts, and send it off. This would take about 15 to 20 minutes. It was a profitable scheme, and to be fair, it worked for that specific field of law. This is highly irregular and would be nearly impossible to effectively mount a counter-argument in any other field of law, which typically requires research and fact-specific rebuttal to very specific challenges to your case. Fast forward, and now the firm is taking on cases in a new field of law, nearly all between 200 and 300,000 per case, or about 100 times what a case in their original field would take. We needed to draft and file complaints on these cases. To achieve this, the partners insisted that our senior attorney would create a template. Our paralegal staff, making $10 an hour, would speak with the client and create an intake cover sheet for each case. And I would be the lucky middleman who got to input the cover sheet data into the template and generate a complaint for every single case in this new field that the firm was handling. In essence, they thought we could handle this new, complex, different field of law with much higher stakes, in much the same way we were handling our normal cases. The intake staff had no clue what they were doing, and the boilerplate template was wildly insufficient to allege the particular facts, which varied so considerably between cases. Also, why intake had problems. The partners thought it should take me about 15 to 20 minutes to generate a complaint with their method. But the reality was I actually had to review every file from scratch, figure out what was going on, input the data myself, make massive edits to the complaint, etc. It would take me at least 1.5 hours to do a good job. And honestly, that's what I did. A good job. As you can imagine, something of a backlog ensued, and the partners wanted to know what the issue was. I explained that due to the nature of the cases, they were requiring specific edits. I offered several recommendations for how we could improve our efficiency, but they didn't want to hear it. I explained that these cases were worth significantly more, and even spending 4 to 5 times longer on them than on our other cases was still a huge win for them. They wanted paper out. Quantity over quality, I was told. Leave the decisions to them, do what I am instructed, and do and play my part on the assembly line. Note that these partners did actually no legal work whatsoever on any cases. They once did, long ago, but now just watch cameras all day and bitch if you're 5 minutes late. In a fit of frustration and rage, I maliciously complied. I actually stayed late a few nights and banged out maybe 75 or so complaints that had backlogged. I sent them all to the senior attorney for final review with no edits whatsoever, wrong data for our intake team, nonsensical legal arguments, fact patterns that were completely untrue, just like I was told. About 3 days later, I got called in for a meeting about what the fuck was going on in these complaints, and that the senior attorney was about 1/3 of the way through what I had sent him, and not one of the complaints was suitable to be filed. I told them I was just doing my job on the assembly line, and that the issue must be coming from somewhere else, but definitely not from me, because I did exactly as instructed and mindlessly input the data and sent it along. They told me this was unacceptable, and if there was an issue, I should have brought it to their attention. To which I replied that I tried and was not listened to. They refused to accept defeat and attempted to change data collection, change the templates, to no avail. It got hostile. No matter what they did, their system just didn't work, and I continued to comply with their insistence I do my job and my job only. It was unbelievable how stubborn these people were. Quit that job and moved on. I've been tracking some of the cases online, and they're getting dismissed on motion. Quantity, not quality, eh? Not how I practice law. 3. I work with a federal contractor responsible to buy or bundle hardware, software, etc. any government organization needs, and review the contract in terms of financial viability and legal clauses. In other words, ensure we make money and we are legally covered. The contracts range from $5,000 to $40 million. Last year, our company went through a reorganization, i.e., fire people and give more work to people still left with the company while paying us peanuts. We are a small company with less than 200 employees and trying to retain our government customers while big companies like Amazon Cloud will replace us in less than 10 years. The government customers love working with us because this is the only thing we do and treat the customer better than big contractors who don't care. They laid off 30 people from my team of 50. So now 20 people do the work for 50 people at the same salary. We are paid by the month and not work hours, and we don't get sales bonuses. I have a habit of reviewing everything carefully and spending hours on each contract, even one that just makes us a few $1,000s. Government vendor selection process is slow, and they are very risk-averse, so a lot of customers start at a few $1,000s and end up in an 8 or 9-figure contract if everything goes well. Since people were laid off, I was struggling with the work volume, and as a result, contracts were piling up. The sales director, i.e. different team, did not like me, as I was slow and also catching any tricks the sales team tried to play by overpromising the customer or something shady. Government clients and customers loved working with me. The support I provided and was truthful regarding our capability and our drawbacks. This was something else the director hated me for, since he thought I'm tanking sales. However, almost all my clients were repeating customers for over a decade. Example: sales wanted a school district to buy outdated Dell Windows laptops, while the entire state was moving towards new, cheaper Chromebooks. Schools don't have budget, and whatever they buy stays for 5+ years. Sales were offloading expensive, useless stuff to get better bonuses and also charge customers nearly $1 million to provide IT support for faults arising from ancient hardware. During my conversation with the school district, I shared examples of state governments in the Northeast buying Chromebooks and saving money while future-proofing the hardware. It was my job to get the best quote to the customer and develop trust to sign a 5 or 10-year contract. So this school district bought Chromebooks, which were 40% cheaper and had less than 20% of the previously quoted IT support cost. As a result, sales team lost a few $1,000s in bonus, but we brought this customer with us for a 5-year contract. The sales director got pissed as I was working on small contracts at a slow pace and reprimanded me in front of our manager. The manager did not care and did not defend me and asked, "Why don't you follow what the sales director says and stop fussing over small contracts?" I said small contracts turn into big ones, hence I should pay attention to them as well. Mistakes in small contracts could harm us if the contract becomes big. I'm struggling at work because you gave me the job of 3 or 4 people. At this point, he was shouting at me that I don't understand contracts. He's been doing this stuff for 5 years, and he makes more money in a month than I do in a year, so I should listen to him and not question him. This was a bit insulting, as I live in a shared apartment and am struggling to make ends meet while he drives an expensive luxury car and just goes out on fancy lunches with government employees. I asked the sales director to send an email with a list of suggestions to improve my work. He rudely complied and said, "Can you not even remember what I just said in the meeting?" His email said, "Do not review contracts less than $100,000 and trust the sales team that due diligence has been done." I replied by copying my manager in the email that this could create liability in the future and want him to confirm again that the sales team will do financial and legal compliance themselves for these small contracts, and I need to stop revising small government contracts below $100,000, with no exceptions unless told otherwise. This was gold. You malicious compliance. Instead of 2 hours, I spent 10 minutes on small contracts. The voila backlog cleared, and I am home by 6 to 6:30 p.m. Now, a contract worth $10,000 comes through. I found some issues with this contract since it said that we offer 30% rebates to our software providers. This was something we stopped doing 5 years ago, and now we just offer providers a 5 to 10% rebate on contracts. Also, I knew the government client really got a massive budget and was on a spending spree, part of my job. There is a high chance that this $10,000 customer will become $100 million, and the 30% rebate means we have to give $30 million on top of the usual cost. But I remembered what the sales director said. Why don't you follow what the sales director says and stop fussing over small contracts? So 10 minutes later I email, "No issues detected based on compliance check by the sales team." As I mentioned, government contracts are slow. No one cared or raised the 30% rebate issue, since it was just a $10,000 customer. 10 months later, the state government customer said they want to work with us and get at least the same terms or better for a new $50 million contract. This was the largest contract in our company's history. The sales director happily gave him a handshake deal that we will offer the same or better terms. Government can legally just buy more in their current contract, so the sales director had no issues promising the same terms. Given contract size, everyone from legal, IT, and finance gets involved to work on just one contract. For 3 months, everyone worked on one contract. The sales team was giddy that they will get million-dollar bonuses. I don't get a sales bonus to ensure I protect customers and the company. The finance team finishes their review and said the company is going to lose $8 million and not make any money. Everyone is shocked. The sales director gave a deal without checking with us, and we cannot go back on something we offer. Changing contract terms is frowned upon by the government, and they have legal contracts stating nothing will change. We are legally obligated to offer the government the same terms for 3 years. The legal team says we need to take the hit on our balance sheet and swallow the losses. The CEO called a big meeting in a fancy conference room with big TV screens, and everyone had to find a scapegoat to take the blame. Every department lead, managers, and people involved in this contract were summoned. The sales leader had to explain to his team why they won't get bonuses on this big contract they spent over 3 months on. Finally, legal and finance meet and share their findings. We lost money due to the 30% rebate clause. The sales director goes crazy and blamed me in front of everyone and asked me to pack my stuff in front of 30 people, follows by saying I am terrible at my job, despite 100% customer satisfaction. I calmly opened my laptop and connected the display cable and opened Outlook, while displaying his email on 3 big TV screens, stating that I should stop reviewing small contracts. While all 30 people read the email with a faint smile, I await the sales director's reaction. He goes into rage mode, claiming I misunderstood his email and am terrible at my job. Then I scroll down where he ignored my warning regarding potential liability to the company, and his response explicitly asked me to ignore that. His face turned white when he realized he fucked up. He then blabbered, trying to find some other scapegoat, making racist tirades against our IT consultants in Vietnam, and just lost it. Aftermath. I was told to spend 2 to 3 hours on each contract, and the company eventually figured out that it was cheaper for them to hire 20 people like me and pay us $70,000 a year than to take big losses on their contracts. Our team has 40 members now. Still less than 50, but enough to offset the contract volume. Because of the losses, sales director had to pay back his previous year's bonus, as he had a clawback clause with the company, i.e., if you screw up, you need to pay us. The sales director had to pay nearly $300,000 and was fired from his job. Present day. He then sued our company for wrongful termination, and we just heard today that he lost the case and now owes us another $200,000 legal fees. Now he owes over $500,000 to our company. You might be wondering, why am I still doing this job which pays less than state wages, and I might be able to make more at other companies. I help government customers buy good stuff from many hardware and software companies, so they don't overpay or rely on one big company. I feel proud when I can save tax dollars and help customers. During COVID, a lot of state governments went remote, i.e. local meetings on Zoom and keeping the government running while working from home. There was a budget freeze due to COVID, the economy shutting down, and since the COVID relief bill was months away, this was a time when the sales team had helpless government customers willing to sign anything just to get remote hardware and software. I saw this as extortion, and despite being an introvert who lacks initiative, to get promoted, I was able to convince the CEO to offer free 60-day trials of expensive hardware and just charge setup and transportation fees. This was a big risk, but we brought an insurance company to offset any damages. I convinced the CEO that this is a time for us to show that we are partners with the government and it was an emergency. The sales team was mad for a month, then realized that all those free customers were calling us for paid contracts over companies that are 10 times our size, that would usually win contracts by lobbying or taking government decision-makers to expensive lunches or something like Super Bowl tickets. I legally cannot disclose the exact government entity by name, but can vaguely say that some entities in the state government of New York and the state government of Florida were both using this trial program during the first wave of COVID. I might change jobs soon since we got a 3% salary hike in the current market, while the company has nearly doubled its revenue in a few years. Before I go, I just remembered another story that made sales leaders hate me even more. This is during the COVID wave when we all were working from home and I was getting used to Zoom. We had a telecom contract with the state government during COVID, and everyone joined a Zoom call to discuss the contract. The sales team was increasing this customer's telecom bills from $60,000 a month to $300,000 a month. I objected that increased calls during COVID are not high enough to justify a big price hike, and we should increase the bill to $100,000 a month. This was enough to cover the cost and even improve profit margin percentage. But the sales team started laughing and saying if the customer can pay more and is ready to pay more, why am I being so vocal? Leadership asked me to shut my mouth and proceed with a $300,000 contract. I started working on other stuff and minimized the Zoom app. I don't end Zoom calls by myself as the meeting admin ends it. Everyone said, "Bye, nice meeting you all," and I naively assumed the call ended. I vented my frustration by saying these salespeople are like wolves when the country is going through shitty times. A coworker sent a chat message a few minutes later, saying that everyone heard what I just said. No one complained or confronted me, but this offended them. Also wanted to add, all sales team members are not like this. Almost all the new sales reps are eager to learn from everyone and not pushing stuff but talking to customers. However, new sales reps mostly handle small or low priority contracts. Any big contract automatically gets transferred to sales leadership. 4. I look after the maintenance of 70 convenience stores, some with quick-serve restaurants as part of the site and business. This particular QSR has recently gone from crappy automatic coffee machines to barista-made coffee machines. As part of the fit-out, a steel frame with a refurbished bar, knockout, is fitted into the counter to knock the puck from the grip handle. The disc of used coffee grounds from the handle you put into the machine, and the coffee comes out the bottom. The problem was the refurbished bars were piss weak and would break within a week, so site would just use the edge of the frame. This pissed me off because I have to fix it when the site complained. It wasn't too much of a problem, but took a few emails for a warranty claim. After I had replaced one a couple of times in a month or so, I asked what was going on. The project manager told me there was a Knockout V2 that was much stronger, so I got them to supply that on the third go-round. I knew there were a couple of sites that were older and their knockouts were fucked too. These guys didn't complain so much. With 70 sites to manage, I had more important things to worry about, but I still like to look after my sites. And it was at the back of my mind and the bottom of my to-do list. Today I grabbed it to get it done. Because I like to help the contractors I use, I put in the legwork with the supplier. I got part numbers and pricing, as well as contact details, so my contractor just had to order the parts and go and install them. The units were only a couple of $100 each. Fuck all in the greater scheme of things, and easier to just buy and install. I checked, and the contractor had ordered from this supplier before, so this was going to be simple. Right? Well, no. The supplier incorrectly said the contractor couldn't order it, and the store had to submit some request bullshit. I checked with the QSR ops manager, and they had no clue what that was about, so I went back to the supplier. Still no. Time for the PR. I replied to the final refusal email as follows. Alright, there is a simple solution. The original units were not fit for purpose, hence the need for you to supply the Knockout V2. Can you please supply, as warranty replacement, 2 units delivered to Site 1 and 2, and I gave the delivery details. The supplier called right after that email. He checked, the one site had the install less than 12 months ago, so it was a legit warranty. The other was closer to 2 years, but I used the not fit for purpose, and we spent shitloads with you arguments, and they relented. The jobs to the contractor will still be needed, but for install only, no supply. 5. This story took place almost 11 years ago, when I just finished my apprenticeship and started working in a combined heat and power plant, CHP. It is not my compliance, but my actions indirectly led to the situation. Also, this did not happen in an English-speaking country, so I am translating position names and terminology to the best of my ability. I will have to give some technical information and backstory, so it makes sense. I'm sorry if this is a bit boring to listen to. The CHP was a smaller plant with 3 boilers, one small one that would only produce hot pressurized water for district heating, and 2 bigger ones that instead would produce super hot and pressurized steam to power a generator, and afterwards the partially cooled down water would be used for district heating. During summer, when demand for heating was low, only the smaller boiler would be used and no electricity would be produced. There were 2 kinds of jobs you would be assigned to, either maintenance, which had working hours from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m., or shift with a 3 times 8-hour rhythm. During summertime, there was only a skeleton crew on shift time, 1 shift foreman and 1 normal worker, while the rest of us would either be on maintenance or take time off to reduce the amount of overtime you accumulate during winter. We had several people working in the office that would be ranked higher than us normal workers, but above the shift foreman were only like 3 people in the plant, one of which was the site director. He was extremely full of himself since he had a doctorate and put on a big boss act, to the point where I thought he was the manager of our CHP branch and only recently learned how wrong I was. He had a habit of visiting the shift workers in the control center, talking to the foreman and fixing some things for pumps and boilers, and then leave back to his office. The problem would be he would always put the settings close to the maximum or minimum of whatever he would fix, Like, for example, the output of the pump that pumps the heated water out of the boilers, stuff like that. So, the people working on shift had to fix his mistakes after he left, so the boilers were not shut down. Okay, with that out of the way, to the actual story of malicious compliance, and my indirect part in it. I had worked at the plant for almost a year, and after my 1-year contract ran out, I would leave for higher education in a completely different field, so I was somewhat running a zero fucks given mentality. I was on maintenance since it was summertime, and got assigned to help the site director's secretary prepare a conference room for some meeting, and we got to chatting about random stuff. But at some point the topic of the site director himself came up, and the conversation went something like this. "So is the site director always so uptight?" "I don't know what you mean, he's a very nice boss and everyone in the office likes to work with him." "Oh, really? I never got that feeling when meeting him in the control center. Really? How come?" "Well, he just walks in, only talks to the foreman at best, and messes with our settings, which we have to fix afterwards, but nobody dares to say something to him, I guess." After that we did not say much more, and I realized pretty quickly that I may have gotten myself into some trouble by talking so openly with her. But I was so used to not really caring that much, and during the conversation, I really didn't consider my words carefully. Well, turns out the secretary told the site director what I said, though to this day I don't know if she mentioned my name, since I was never spoken to about this topic. The site director, however, was apparently pissed off enough that he walked into the control center the next day, did his messing with the setting, and then forbid the foreman to revert the changes, because he knows better than anyone in this building how to run the plant. The foreman did as he was told, and did not touch what the site director changed. After about 20 minutes, the plant had an emergency shutdown because the boiler ran out of water and was about to overheat. There were no repercussions for any customers since we had a big reservoir container at all times connected to the district heating net that could bridge the time until the boiler could be restarted. But any emergency shutdown has to be followed up by a team from the main office downtown. Probably so they can pin the fault on someone should it come to some financial hit. The fallout that I witnessed at the time was mainly the site director being a bit of a laughingstock among us workers, and him not coming into the control center for the time I was still working there. I left a few weeks later, after my contract ran out, and honestly, I didn't think too much of it until I met an old coworker of mine, who is a shift foreman himself now. He told me about half a year after I left, the actual branch manager had a meeting with all shift foremen, and a while after that, the site director was fired, after it was discovered that he put almost all his workload on the foreman and some of the office workers. Afterwards, one of the most senior shift foremen was offered some advanced training in order to take on the position of site director, since they needed someone in the position that actually knows how to operate the plant, and they were doing most of his job already anyways. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 132. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. If you enjoyed the video, then please do share it around with all your friends and family. Right, no shout-outs or anything today, so let's get straight to the Hellfreezer's question of the day. And that is, we're heading towards summer now. We're not there yet, but we're heading toward it. I'll be here before you know it. And when the weather gets hotter, I mean, if you're in the UK, you're in a place that's not always hot. So, when the weather gets hotter, or maybe it's always hot where you are, what's your favorite thing to do to cool off, right? For me, I like to have 2 fans blowing me. Could have phrased that better. Not going to retake it. I like to have 2 fans on the go, and usually something cool from the freezer, or just one of those big cups filled with ice, with something nice and sweet in it as well. It's better if it's sweet, I find. Whatever you like to do, leave an answer in the comments. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.